Ladies and gentlemen, the topic today is reimagining leadership, productivity, and workplace. We are all in the COVID times. 2 years have passed. The way of our leadership has completely changed. Gone were the days where we were going to our offices, where the whole leadership was being talked about, seeing in the eyes of the people and being directed out over there what should be our next steps and how the companies and the strategies will be formed out. 2 years down the road, we are all working in our homes, in our remote offices, and we are talking about how we have to get the defined results for our respective companies or countries, and how we are going to get the end result by driving the people what should be the key leadership qualities that are required in our workforce, and how we can further elaborate that which are the imperative things that is required from our workforce to achieve the desired results. The way of leadership has completely changed. We need leaders who has the complete knack of identifying the key resources and adopting them as per the new rules and regulations and the new world order that we see today. That's the way the leadership has completely changed today. The next big thing comes in is the productivity. How we are going to judge, how we are going to make the right assumptions that the productivity that we are requiring from this workforce that is present in our banks, in our telecom sector, that is present in our manufacturing units, how we are going to get the desired results out of these productive resources. How we are going to judge that are we investing in the right set of resources and they are giving us the right product and productivity that we are looking at today. What are the three criteria of productivity and the definitions that have changed in this post-COVID area that we are talking about today? Productivity and output through this leadership is one of the three criteria that link together, and that is the discussion that we will have today. And the last important point of our discussion today is the workplace. Let's be honest, our dining rooms and drawing rooms have become our offices today. We have started working in the cars, we have started working near the beach, we have started working out from our rooftops. There is our kids in our conference calls today, and we have our pets sitting next to us when we are doing our video calls with our customers or with our clients and with our teams. And everything is accepted today. Everything is part of the new normal today. And that's how the workplaces are getting empty, but the definition of workplace is also completely changing. Because where you have your laptop, where you have the connectivity, that is becoming your workplace. And it doesn't require to be coming to a certain office and following the rules that we used to rule, where the end time and start times were being marked out. All these three things connected together, we are talking about leadership, we are talking about productivity, and we are talking about the workplace that is required to be done and seen how in different aspects we are going to impact our lives today. We have a great panel today, and they will be talking about and covering all these different aspects that we are starting today. So let me start the discussion first, Yusuf Saab, from your side, and talking about that when we talk about this productivity, reimagining the world, and we are talking about the leadership on that front. How do you see the future, financial future of financial and telecom sector both for Pakistan moving forward and globally? What is the impact of these factors today on our leadership, and how do you see Pakistan growing on that factor, especially with the vision of 2047 that has been the hallmark of our discussion today?
Assalamu alaikum. Well, I think digital is, there is going to be an amalgamation of digital, financial sector, technology. All of these are emerging as the new channels for all the businesses to the consumers. So there is absolutely no denial of this fact. COVID has obviously increased it many folds. And it's no longer today, I don't think it's an offensive strategy, it's actually a defensive strategy now. The financial sector actually has to do it, otherwise they'll be basically wiped off. So I think this is clearly the direction. Now, I think the dilemma really at this point in time that the financial sector is facing is that there is a lot of investment that is required into the digital sector or the technology sector. But the returns are slow to come. So a lot of because of the cash economy, because of the taxation reasons, because of many other things, people don't want to be documented at this point in time, and thus they have been avoiding the digital channels. But as the governor, State Bank said, that it's picking up very fast and it's rapidly increasing. So this is really the need of the hour. And going forward, I think it's going to be an amalgamation of all these things, and your bank actually is going to be in your phone. So the telecoms will act as a major distribution channel, and digital products distribution is only going to be through the channels of communication. So 4G, 5G going forward, all of these vehicles are actually going to play a major role. So I foresee that the branches of the banks are probably going to be relevant for a while, maybe in our country 5-10 years. But the models are going to change absolutely, and the models are going to be basically largely technology driven. The branches are going to be probably more like supermarkets where there are various products, financial products being sold, but the servicing part and the operational servicing of accounts is going to be through digital very soon, as compared to the pickup on the business side. So now is the time for all the financial sector, the banks, the microfinance banks, they're already there to invest into this, and that's the future.
Thank you very much, Yusuf Saab. Moving to overall, Konstantin, which is a senior executive officer from the Startlink side, and you have a complete view on the regional dimensions of different works that we are doing on the overall, which has an impact on the global economy as well. How are the emerging markets handling the future of the works theory in wake of the post-COVID era? Because both these dimensions of future of works and the emerging technologies, they were talking about a totally different story ahead 5 years back. What is the impact of the COVID era, and how do you see moving it forward here?
Thank you for the opportunity to be here and to be present. Very excited to be in Islamabad. For context, we operate in sub-Saharan Africa, in GCC countries, and about 4 years ago started operating in Pakistan. We look very heavily at early stage companies and how they are progressing. So I think the question how technology has adapted to COVID is pertinent. From our perspective, it's very exciting to see technology, but at the same time, it is a privilege that not everyone has. On a recent trip to Kenya, we went to visit some clients that are servicing rural farmers and with agricultural inputs through technology and through those through non-traditional channels. And what was interesting to observe, technology cannot solve the physical distribution of goods. So when we look at COVID and how it impacted, everybody seems to be very pleased to sit at home and have their meetings, but that is a privilege of very few, where the many that actually service our supermarkets, that produce our foods, and that make the things that we all require to sit in our houses and to have our meetings in our offices, do not have that luxury. So the way we see technology is bridging that gap. There's a lot of attention being on communication. That's been the focus, where our focus is currently on logistics and how the goods are being transferred into the city centers from the rural areas where those goods are produced. So I think technology is exciting. We're all super eager and sometimes exhausted from our Zoom meetings and from all the calls we're taking in our houses. But we can't forget that we still require the farmers and manufacturers to produce physical goods. And unfortunately, we have yet to see a technological breakthrough that will remove the human element from it. And a secondary question to that is what happens if that ever does happen? where will those people work and where will they earn a living? So I think it's a bit of a loaded question you've asked. I hope my answer is sufficient.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stratus. I think it's important because these days, these are the key questions that is coming in the leadership of today, the questions that how this wealth should be managed in the best possible way. Marcos, you have been handling another German company over here in Pakistan with Siemens, with its large history over here. And Siemens, I being part of the Siemens historically as well, and I know what kind of workforce that you carry, also in the manufacturing unit as well as in the leadership there as well. And especially in this era of leadership today, there is a lot of discussion about the mental health, how we can manage the mental health of our employees, and what are the important steps that the organizations needs to do of people working from home, having a lot of stress of their work-life balance out over there as well, and talking about that how we can manage this workforce and how we can take care of the mental health of our employees as a leader today.
Zakib, yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. And it's indeed one dimension that initially was eventually overlooked, but became increasingly important as COVID carried on and lasted. So the key is communication. The leaders need to stay in touch, and that was our experience. Simply because we don't meet physically in office, doesn't mean we can't communicate. We have to increase the pace and the frequency of our communication with the staff. Why? To stay in a social interaction, to also early detect if there are moderations in our leadership team, if they are facing challenges, but also how is their physical well-being, because maybe some were caught up in a high-rise tower on the 50th floor and couldn't leave their apartment for weeks and months. So in these three dimensions, we actually ventured out. And I had an interesting experience with this because I started during COVID in Dubai and moved during COVID to Pakistan. So I have seen these both extremes. And as I said before, the physical part, we had to encourage employees to follow online yoga sessions. We had to ask them to break meetings, stand up, do physical exercise, and even give them ideas on how to do their physical exercise while pools or fitness centers were closed. As funny as it sounds, but leadership had to take that role apart from trying to run the business, because you wouldn't believe how many ailments and diseases or sicknesses have also developed while people tried to stay away from COVID. That's one thing. The other, the mental fitness or the mental state initially wasn't really much of a concern, but then you see how certain income streams are diminishing or loan payments have to go on, how people start to get into a bit of desperation, not knowing what the future will bring, how their new assignments will be, will the company grow, will it stall, will it shrink? And we put a lot of attention on that aspect, because it is underjudged, undervalued, and we also have created an employee assistance program. And important at such an employee assistance program is that it is really anonymous. It is totally confidential. We tell the people where they can reach help, where they can speak with someone who potentially can give them advice, not necessarily solve their problems, but they need to know where to go. So they are not caving in on their problems. And I think this rollout in the Middle East started first in UAE and more advanced countries, but also we have adopted now, and we start the rollout in Pakistan, that people have a helpline, that they can bounce their troubles, which eventually they can't speak about in the family, that they can speak about those things, may it be loans, maybe financial, maybe family interactions, and with a trained specialist. And I have heard really great feedback from this program, because people suddenly found solid ground to stand on and got more confidence to master the crisis. So it has a very high priority. I don't blame anyone if they haven't started. We also got into it probably 6 months ago, or 8 months, beginning of the year. But it is a really important dimension to watch the health, the mental health of our employees. Yeah.
Absolutely, Marcus. I think this employee assistance program are the key, and I think majority of the multinational companies have initiated this one, and I will highly say that if any kind of help is required in terms of guidance about this one, because these days the mental health of our employees sitting at homes is a very key factor. We don't understand the kind of stresses and pressures that has been generated with this work-life balance that we are talking about. So this experts who provides the complete guidance how to manage such situations for our employees are the key, and Siemens has been very in forefront of managing them in the best possible way. Coming to you, Munis, and I know Munis now for quite some time over here and heading K Electric, and all the time in the news for every good or bad reason there as well. And I salute him for the way he's able to represent K Electric and also highlight the good things that K Electric is doing. So I must say that having always been under pressure of something wrong, and then in spite of that, when talking about as a leader that what good thing is K is doing is something that Munis has done remarkably well. Munis, and I will ask you when I talk about the leadership and productivity question, I will come to you, say you are heading a utility company, and suddenly in the last 2 years, when the people cannot go out of homes, the communication and the roads are not open, and still you and your company have to provide them the connectivity, the electricity that is required to the biggest city of Pakistan over there. What kind of challenges that you faced, how you overcame them as a leader, and what kind of productivity goals that you set out for you and your team to achieve those results?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Saqib. Thank you very much. Let me first, start with this, that whatever we do, we enjoy it. And again, the satisfaction that we have is that we are serving the largest city in the country, and we are making impact on the lives of almost 22 to 24 million people who are living in Karachi. And when I always tell my team, when you see the lights on, it's us who are doing that for the city. And whenever we are taking the evening flight to Karachi and the plane is landing and we see a city lit, it gives a lot of satisfaction. And again, what we are trying to do is to ensure that it gets more power, and it is again रोशनियों का शहर, further रोशनियों का शहर बन सके इंशाल्लाह. I think what we saw in the pandemic is very challenging. And the reason why I say that is that we found out immediately that people have announced that everyone has to just go home and work from home, and it's fine. They have the internet, they have the laptops, and they can talk, and that's all what was needed. But as a utility, we have to operate our own plants. We have to run the distribution systems, the grid stations, the load dispatch centers, and at the same time the distribution, when you have to provide that power to 3.1 million customers, and which is transported through lines 112,000 kilometers in overall length. They have to be fixed if there is a fault. And while we can sit home and do these meetings on Zoom and Teams and whatever, but majority of the workforce would still be in the field, going to the plants and LDCs and grid stations. So it was challenging, and again I think we emphasize this. We try to create that bubble where this does not go into that part of our organization which can, God forbid, impact the ability to supply power, whether it is power plants, whether it is grid stations, whatever. And I think we learned a lot. While it was easy for few organizations to just do it, but we learned a lot. And I would say today we probably operate in a much better manner, and those initial challenges are over. At the same time, the biggest challenge again which we faced at that point in time was that while the industry was shut, the commercial was shut, but we were told, and let me tell you, this was again an order, that you should provide uninterrupted power, and even if there is a non-payment, you cannot go and disconnect. So by the way, the entity lost a few billion rupees in that period. But again, this is something which was needed at that point in time. While we are a private company, but the board, they acknowledged the public service role, and this is the reason why we reported a loss last year. But this was again, this is the business that we are in, and we cannot just shy away from that fact. And I think, as mentioned by Dr. Raza Bakar, I think that support that was provided, it not only helped, I'm sure it helped a lot of entities in the country where that loan which was provided to keep the workforce, employed, was very important. And I think, we also got benefit from that, and a part of our borrowing was converted into that support loan. Again, the condition was that you should not fire anyone in that period, and by the way, we did not. And I'm sure the organizations which utilized that loan, they all complied with the conditions attached to that. So it was good and it was bad. Good is that while there was a lot of issues in industries and commercial, but we the decline in our sale was hardly 15 to 20%, while the entire industry was shut. So the business is fantastic, and this year we are seeing growth. I think we probably are surpassing any growth rates that we have witnessed in the last so many years. So I think as a utility, we are looking forward to the growth that everyone is talking about, and hopefully, inshallah, we'll be able to deliver. What we have learned in this, again, with the help of Marcos, we are building a 900 megawatt power plant. What used to happen in our previous experiences when we built these plants was that there were meetings having 30 to 40 engineers, traveling to all parts of the world where it was the turbine was manufactured, or when the EPC contractor was supposed to be, having all those meetings, and the plant site. There was one meeting which happened just before the COVID started, and post that, everything happened online. And alhamdulillah, inshallah, we'll be in a position to inaugurate that plant very soon. The entire supply chain, the EPC is almost $410 million. So imagine the supply chain which is involved in that, the shipping, all parts of the world, ports are used, and everything was impacted. But alhamdulillah, I think the world has learned from this pandemic. And while there is, we were reading some articles in the Bloomberg, they're saying that please don't think that it is over. It can come back, and we have already seen. Initially, it was a UK variant, then it was an Indian variant, so we don't know whether it is over or not. But we have to be careful. We have to get ourselves vaccinated. We have to ensure that we provide that vaccinated, free environment to our people, so that they can, come safely and interact with people when needed. While if they are even at home, they should have that element of security and satisfaction that the entity in which they are working, they are taking care of them. So I hope I answered your question.
Nee, thank you very much, Maurice, and that is the key as well, because we expect the best services out over there, and we forget at times what are the tough environments on which these companies has to work, where we are also running companies and know how the scenarios are changing on a day-to-day basis. And in the last 2 years, these scenarios were not in control of anybody. And despite that, providing the end result of the productivity and results with the leadership that team you have has been the key hallmark on that direction. Moving on to Ghazanfar. Ghazanfar, you are heading the Mobilink Microfinance Bank. And my question to you is about leadership. Now, we have a team of different leaders which are working in our companies in different positions. And majority of these leaders has the ability, experience, and not of the experience of working and leading teams which are present in their offices, which were present historically in front of their eyes, and they have to lead and demand and get the results out of the teams and with their physical presence on ground. Now, as the modes of the working environment has completely changed, and the same leaders has to get the output out of the remote teams, which are present in different places of Pakistan and at times outside Pakistan as well. How do you feel at this challenge can be managed, and this breed of leaders, what they have to do to manage this new aspect of leadership that is required out of them after this current era that we are talking about?
Yeah, I think leadership test for any leader is to basically, first of all, figure out how to continue to serve customers well and exceed their expectations, even in challenging times. So when the COVID came, I think the biggest impediment that happened was there were restrictions on movement. We are a nationwide organization serving, if we add branchless customers, millions of customers. And the challenge was that they are able to continue to perform their financial functions without much of difficulty. And we are able to support them, we are able to serve them, we are able to address their complaints. By the way, my institution has 2 licenses, that's why it's a unique one. One is the microfinance bank, and the other is branchless banking license, which makes us the largest mobile bank in Pakistan, or you may say digital bank. And in COVID times, again, the importance of technology became even more clear. The mobile banking as a whole added to about 50 million plus mobile accounts in Pakistan, which almost doubled the penetration of banking in Pakistan. The bulk of, obviously, these customers are small ticket, they are low income, they are spread all over the country. But then again, the challenge was to bring them in the system who have been excluded from financial inclusion for a very long time. So, again, when you have such a large number of customers, I have 32 million mobile account holders, out of which about 14 million make transactions every month. And these are very small ticket, as I said, I mean, with an average balance of about 1,000 rupees. But the issue arises how to serve them all in a way that there are no hindrances created, and then their complaints are addressed expeditiously. So what we have done is, over a period of time, is to continue to strengthen our technology and digital capabilities. We are probably the first bank of its kind which has established a full-fledged digital banking division in the bank. And the idea of having this digital banking division is not only that the bank will digitize its existing operations completely, but also partner with all fintechs and other technology companies that are working in this space, financial services space, to actually create more value and value-added services for our customers. Pakistan, as we know, is a very large country, and still a lot of work is to be done. Financial inclusion is still halfway done. So I believe in the next 5 to 10 years, as Yusuf said, there is a huge transformation is going on. We are moving away from branch banking and moving towards technology channels. Primarily, the phone is becoming your bank. And what we believe is that not only we will be addressing the routine type of financial transactions that everybody does, but also we recently did a pilot with our partners, which is nano lending, lending to small income people digitally without human intervention. And the turnaround time is just a couple of minutes. And within the pilot project, we added about 1.5 million borrowers to the system. Mind you, we have only about 10 million borrowers, all banks included, microfinance banks included, microfinance included. So we have about 10% of the population covered in terms of access to loans. And we just added 1.5 million customers through digital lending in a pilot phase. So that